I'm gonna save you 5 years and thousands of dollars by sharing 10 things I wish I knew before buying a sawmill. Because over the years, I've learned multiple tricks and hacks you can use to make higher quality lumber, save you time, and so you can make more money. First, I wanna show you the biggest mistake most woodcutters make that turns even the best logs into crooked, stained, and moldy wood. I'm of course talking about stacking and drying wood the right way with stacking strips. This allows air to flow freely and remove moisture and prevent mold and allow even drying. The problem is most sawmill owners completely get this wrong, which ruins their lumber. The first thing you have to get right here is your stacking strips, also known as stickers. These need to be dried to EMC to prevent mold in between the sticker and your lumber itself, which in turn will stain your lumber. However, even if you dry your stickers, you might still unknowingly warp your lumber, because if you have your stickers spaced randomly, you will create board as you see here. If you want flat wood, you have to keep those stickers in line with each other to keep the weight and pressure from layer to layer to travel through those pressure points evenly. Now, for the dimensions, we need something that allows for stable stacking, but also minimal surface contact and adequate space for air to move freely. That way we can remove unwanted moisture and prevent mold. After drying tens of thousands of board feet, I find that the best dimensions are somewhere around a 3/4 of an inch in width, 1 inch in height, and around 40 inches in length. But now that you have these neatly stacked bundles, you still need to place them in an area where the prevailing wind can move freely. On top of that, you also need to cover your wood, whether it be under a covered area, such as this stack of lumber in this shed, or if you don't have those luxuries, don't worry, because a sheet of roofing tin works well also. Next is to make sure your stack is on a flat surface so that you do not add a bow into your wood. For instance, I have concrete here, and for out here at this stack, I have timbers on the ground, leveled evenly across the ground and off of the ground for something to sit on.
Before we move on, I'd like to invite y'all to our newsletter.
That's where you will receive tips, tricks, and hacks to help you make more money more efficiently with your sawmill. The link is down in the description. And this brings us to the next point. Which mill is best suited for your needs? Before you know exactly which mill to go with, you need to think about your end goal. This will help you make a much wiser investment. I put several hours throughout several months researching and settled on the Timber King 1600 as my first mill, which is a partial hydraulic mill. It was cheaper than a full hydraulic with a little less labor requirements than a full manual mill. If you're looking for a small hobby mill to have around the farm, maybe a small manual mill like the Timber King 1220 will do the trick. They are reasonably inexpensive and do a great job. And yes, you can still make money with a small manual mill. Now, if you're needing to mill at a much higher pace to keep up with business, the full hydraulic mill like this Timber King 2020 will be a great choice. Although they do have a higher price tag, the increase in production speed makes more money. But if you're looking for production speed to make more money, you also need to be sure you have the correct log handling equipment. Handling logs around the mill is what you make it. With the right tools, you can make this easier on yourself and your body. But they can also save you time and make you more money in the long run. Even if you have a small mill and don't have access to a tractor, for example, to handle your logs, there is a tool invented by Joseph Peavy in the mid-1850s to help with this. It's called a cant hook and a peavy. I keep mine readily available right here by the log deck and by my sawmill. I use it all the time. They've been used ever since and still work to this day. This tool allows you to hook onto a log and use leverage to move a heavy log with ease. This is a 30-inch. These come in several lengths made by several different companies. I particularly like this log right with the no finger smash technology. I guess that's what you call it. I do anyway. If you've ever used one of these, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Now, if you're fortunate enough to have a tractor or skid steer, I would recommend having a grapple instead of forks when handling logs. This allows for much more control of the log around the mill, making it much, much safer. but don't write off your forks because they have their specific uses too. This brings me to my next point. This is something I first overlooked when I bought a sawmill. However, you should be thinking of this before you ever buy one. You need to ask yourself the question, where will I get my logs? Because depending on what you mill, you might need different types of suppliers. Here's a few types of arborists you should check with depending on your needs. Number one, your local tree service. They can usually provide smaller quantities. One thing to look out for here is most of these trees are yard trees. They can contain metal such as nails and screws, especially in the first 8 feet. This is not a deal breaker though. Discuss it with your arborist and they will know exactly what you're looking for. Even though they provide smaller quantities, they can still provide very good quality. Now, you also have your local land developers. It's where I get my trees from. They can usually provide you with a much larger quantities at a better price than a logger because most of the time they're dealing with small tracts of land and they usually burn them just to get rid of them. So it's a very good chance you can strike a reasonable deal to keep your log yard replenished. And for large scale, high production, a great option would be to get in touch with a full-time logging company. These guys can provide you with more trees than you can cut. With all this fine lumber being cut and money getting made, there's also a messy side of things you need to know about. Think of your work area around a mill like a busy kitchen. You have all your ingredients, now the work begins. But so does the mess. You will have scraps, spills, and clutter. If you don't keep things tidy and organized, it can become dangerous. This didn't take me long to realize. In the beginning, I was so eager to make lumber, I didn't realize how fast the flitches and sawdust were building up and began getting in the way. The flitches started becoming a trip hazard while the sawdust piled higher and higher. And I'm sure if you've cut a little while, you've also experienced these things. Here are a couple options you have to help with these issues. If you're milling hardwood, set your flitches aside and cut them down into firewood sized pieces. This makes for maximum efficiency from that log and wasting nothing. I often mill cypress and I sell the flitches. These make for a decorative, rustic, and weather resistant material. If you're like me and cut predominantly pine in the south where it's hot, throw them into a burn pile frequently. As for a growing pile of sawdust, as you can see behind me, this can be used as garden mulch to retain moisture and suppress weeds. Also for bedding materials or in compost as the carbon source. I compost some and put some directly into the garden, but I can only use so much for this. And for the rest, just like my pine flitches, I throw them into the burn pile as well. Whatever you choose to do with it, make sure you have the pile accessible to make easy work with a bucket on your tractor or any other approach of choice. Now that you've decided on a mill and where you're going to get your logs, you need to know what you're going to sell. You do not want to be cutting aimlessly, wasting valuable logs, money, and more importantly, your valuable time. In the beginning, you may have to cut a variety of lumber to see what is in demand in your area. I started out by milling dimensional lumber because there was a huge demand for it. 10-foot 2x4s, 12-foot 1x12s, and 16-foot 2x6s were my very best sellers. This worked well for a while until it seemed like everybody and their grandma had a mill and was cutting dimensional lumber. Even though I still cut dimensional lumber and still keep some on hand, like you see here, these are 1x12 10s, 2x4 12s. I had to change my strategy a little. I now sell finished products such as V-groove, tongue and groove, and shiplap. Sometimes you have to set yourself apart from the crowd and get away from the many to be with the few and specialize in a niche product. Your product and time can be much more valuable here. Speaking of something being valuable, let's jump back into your previous investment. Even though this isn't an absolute necessity the day you buy your mill, I think it's something to think about in the very near future to protect your investment. Talking about a sawmill shed. I built this particular one for my 1600 mill. So yes, it could be a tad bit bigger. I never thought there would be a 2020 mill in here so soon. Either way, the mill is covered and protected from the direct sun and weather, which will increase the service you receive from your equipment. The thing is, even though you now know what to expect when setting up your sawmill operation, there's much more sawmilling knowledge you need to master. If you don't, it don't matter how many logs you have, your boards may still be crooked. So watch the next video where I'll show you the most efficient way to mill your lumber to maximize your production.